I held her hand as she took her last breath. I told her I'd be okay. I lied. Her name was Claire. My daughter. 23 years old. With her mother's laugh. And my stubborn streak. She died on a Tuesday in November. 9 years ago. On the Trans-Canada Highway just outside Rivière-du-Loup, Quebec. In a collision that the police report described as multi-vehicle, high-impact, fatal. I remember the officer who came to my door. I remember the way he held his hat in both hands. I remember thinking before he even opened his mouth that I already knew. A father knows. Something in my chest had gone quiet around the same time the accident happened. Like a clock stopping. Her name was Claire Marie Bouchard, and I buried her on a gray Saturday in December, in the cemetery behind Saint-Anne-de-la-Pocatière, beside her grandmother. The priest said she was with God. I nodded. I didn't believe it then. I'm not sure what I believe now. My name is Robert. I'm 64 years old. I live alone in a small house in Lévis, across the river from Quebec City. I worked 31 years for the provincial government. Benefits administration. Nothing dramatic. I have a sister in Edmonton. I call on birthdays, and a retired colleague named Gilles, who meets me for coffee on Thursday mornings at the Tim Hortons on Taniata. I am not a man who believes in miracles. I am not a man who believes in impossible things, until 8 weeks ago, when my phone rang at 1147 on a Wednesday night, and the number on the screen was Claire's. I need you to understand what that felt like. I had kept her number in my contacts for 9 years. I don't know why. Maybe for the same reason I still have her winter coat in the closet by the back door. Maybe because deleting it felt like losing her a second time. The number had been inactive for years, I knew that. I had tried calling it once. Maybe 6 months after she died. Just to hear her voicemail recording. There was nothing. Just 3 beeps and silence. So when I saw those 10 digits on my screen, her area code, her number, in the name I had never removed, Claire, I did not answer. I couldn't move. I sat in my armchair, with my heart slamming against my ribs, and I watched the phone ring 4 times and stop. Then a text message came through. Hi, I think this might be your number. I'm sorry to contact you like this. My name is Sophie. I need to talk to someone. I think I might know who I am. I read it 3 times. Then I read it 3 more. My hands were shaking badly enough that I almost dropped the phone. I told myself it was a wrong number. I told myself someone had been reassigned. Claire's old number, that happens. Phone companies recycle numbers after enough time passes, and this woman was simply confused. I told myself a lot of things in those first few minutes. Then the second message came. I found an old journal in a box at my foster mother's house. The name on the inside cover is Claire Bouchard. I don't know if that means anything to you. I'm sorry if I have the wrong person. I sat there in the dark for a long time. Claire had kept a journal since she was 14. Green cover. Elastic band around it. That her name written in black marker. On the inside front page, the way she always wrote it, last name first. The way she had learned in school. Claire Bouchard. I had given her that journal. A Christmas gift. She used to carry it in her backpack. It had been buried with her. I know that because I put it there myself. The morning of the funeral, I had gone into her apartment. She had a small place in the Saint Roch neighborhood of Quebec City. A 1-bedroom above a Vietnamese restaurant, and I had taken a few things to place with her. Her journal. A photo of the 2 of us at Montmorency Falls the summer she turned 20. Her favorite wool scarf. Blue, with white snowflakes. The one her grandmother knitted for her. I laid those things in the casket myself. I watched them close the lid, so the journal could not exist. It could not be in a box at someone's foster mother's house in wherever this person was calling from. It was impossible. I typed back, "Who gave you this number?" Her answer came quickly. It was in the journal. On the last page, just the number and the word Dad. I had to put the phone down on the table. I walked to the kitchen and ran cold water over my wrists, the way my mother used to tell me to do when I was overwhelmed as a boy. I stood there for probably 2 minutes. Then I went back and picked up the phone. "Where are you?" I typed. "Moncton, New Brunswick. I've been here for about 3 years. Before that, I don't really know. I'm sorry. I know this is strange. I can stop if you want me to." I didn't want her to stop. I was terrified of what she might say next. But I did not want her to stop. We texted back and forth for almost 2 hours that night. I learned pieces of her story in fragments. The way you learn things from someone who is also frightened, who is choosing carefully what to share. Her name, the name she had been given at the hospital, was Sophie. She was 32 years old, which made no sense to me at first, because Claire had been 23 when she died. And that was 9 years ago. 32 minus 9 is 23. The math lined up, but it didn't feel real. She told me she had been found on the side of Route 185, not far from the site of a major accident, in the early morning hours of a November day, 9 years ago. She had been found by a transport driver who had stopped because he thought she was a deer. She had no identification. She had significant injuries, a fractured collarbone, broken ribs, a serious head injury that had left her unconscious for 11 days. When she woke up in the hospital in Rivière-du-Loup, she did not know her name. She did not know where she was. She did not remember anything before waking up in that bed. The accident on Route 185, that November, the one that killed my daughter, had involved 4 vehicles: a transport truck, 2 passenger cars, and an SUV that had rolled into the ditch. There had been 2 fatalities confirmed at the scene. One of them had been identified as Claire Bouchard. Sophie asked me, very carefully, in a text message at nearly 2 in the morning, whether my daughter had been in a car accident on Route 185 inches November 9 years ago. I told her yes. There was a long pause. Then, I think I might have been in that accident too. I think maybe I was pulled from the ditch and they didn't know who I was. I think maybe I was your daughter. I did not sleep that night. In the morning, I called Gilles, which is not something I normally do outside of Thursday coffee. He listened to the whole thing without interrupting, which is one of the things I value about Gilles. When I finished, he said, very quietly, "Robert, you have to go to Moncton." I called my sister in Edmonton after that. She cried immediately, which made me cry, which surprised me. I had not cried in several years. Not since the first anniversary of Claire's death. She said the same thing as Gilles. She said, "Robert, you have to go." I texted Sophie that afternoon and asked if I could come see her. I told her I understood if she needed time. I told her there was no pressure. I told her I just needed to see her face. She said yes. I drove to Moncton, 9 hours on the highway, which I did over 2 days because I am 64 years old and my back does not tolerate what it used to. I stopped overnight in Rivière-du-Loup, which I had not visited since the funeral, and I sat in the parking lot of my motel and looked at the exit signs for Route 185 and felt something crack open inside me that I didn't have a word for. Sophie had suggested we meet at a cafe near the Champlain Place Mall, a public place, during the day. She said she had a friend who would sit nearby in case either of us needed support. I thought that was sensible. I thought that showed good judgment. I was already, without meaning to, cataloging small things about her. I arrived 15 minutes early and chose a table by the window. I ordered a coffee I didn't drink. I watched the door. When she walked in, I felt like the floor had dropped away. She was tall. The way Claire had been tall. Taller than her mother. Taller than me. With the same slightly self-conscious posture of a woman who had spent years being the tallest person in the room. Her hair was darker than Claire's had been. Cut short in a way. Claire never wore it. She was thinner than I remembered Claire being. There were 9 years of living in her face that I had never seen, but her hands, she wrapped both hands around her coffee cup when she sat down. And I had to look away for a moment because the gesture, the specific way she held the cup, thumbs hooked over the rim, was so completely and entirely Claire that I could not breathe. We talked for 3 hours. She told me what she remembered, which was not much and came in pieces. She had flashes of images that she could never place a kitchen with yellow curtains, the smell of cedar, a specific song. She would sometimes hear and feel a sharp ache that she couldn't explain. She had worked with a psychologist in Moncton for 2 years, trying to reconstruct anything. The psychologist had suggested that her memory loss was consistent with traumatic brain injury, that some things might return over time, that some might not. She told me about the journal. She had found it 3 months ago while helping her foster mother, an older woman named Georgette, who had taken her in during the years after the hospital, clean out a storage room. The box it was in was labeled Found Items Hospital 2016. Georgette had no memory of where it came from. Sophie had opened it and seen the name on the inside cover, and had felt something she described as a vibration, not recognition. Exactly. More like the feeling of a word on the tip of your tongue. She had searched the name. She found an obituary. She found my name, Robert Bouchard, listed as surviving family. She had spent 2 weeks working up the nerve to contact me. I asked her if I could show her something on my phone. She nodded. I opened my photos, and I found the picture, the one I had placed in the casket. Montmorency Falls. The summer. Claire turned 20. Claire and me. Squinting into the sun. Her arm around my shoulders because she was taller. Her smile. Enormous. Her wool scarf. Blue with white snowflakes around her neck, even in August, because she had just bought it and was too excited to wait. Sophie looked at the photo for a very long time. Then she said, very quietly, I have dreams about that waterfall. I had not told her it was Montmorency Falls. I had not told her anything about the photo except that I wanted to show it to her. She had looked at it and told me she dreamed about that waterfall. I excused myself and went to the bathroom and stood over the sink for a long time. We agreed to pursue DNA testing. In Canada, you can arrange private DNA relationship testing through accredited laboratories. The results are admissible for personal knowledge purposes, though not automatically for legal matters. But that wasn't what either of us was after. We weren't after anything legal. We just needed to know. The wait was 3 weeks. I will not describe those 3 weeks in detail because I don't have adequate language for them. I will say that Sophie and I texted every day. I learned that she worked in a bakery and had a cat named Biscuit, and that she took the bus to work because she had never learned to drive, which is something Claire had also never done, a fact I had complained about many times, and which I now thought about with a feeling I can only describe as a kind of tender absurdity. I learned that she liked old movies and disliked cilantro and had strong opinions about the Canadians, which is a reasonable position for anyone raised in this country. I did not let myself believe. I tried very hard not to let myself believe. The results came on a Thursday afternoon, which meant I was sitting with Gilles at the Tim Hortons on Taniata when my phone showed me an email notification from the laboratory. I looked at Gilles. He looked at me. He said, "Do you want me to leave?" I said, "No." I opened the email. I read the first paragraph. Then I read the conclusion at the bottom. The clinical language about probability percentages and relationship classification. The result indicated a biological father-daughter relationship with a probability exceeding 97%. I put the phone face down on the table. I covered my face with both hands. Gilles didn't say anything for a while. Then I heard him get up, and I felt him put his hand on my shoulder. And he just stood there like that, while I came apart in a Tim Hortons on a Thursday afternoon. Which is maybe not where you'd choose to receive the most important news of your life. But I have stopped questioning the timing of grace. I called Sophie from the parking lot. She already knew the lab had contacted her as well. She was crying. I was crying. We both apologized for crying and then laughed a little. And the laugh sounded so much like Claire's laugh that I had to lean against my car and look up at the November sky and tell myself to keep breathing. There are things that still don't have clean answers. The official record says Claire Bouchard died in that accident 9 years ago. The body identified at the scene was identified by me. Her father and I have thought about this many times since, trying to understand how that was possible. The accident was severe. There were multiple casualties. I have gone back through everything I can access. And the working theory that the investigators who have since been involved have suggested is that there may have been an error in the initial identification that, in the chaos of a multi-vehicle accident in low visibility in November, the woman I identified may have been misidentified, and that Sophie Claire was pulled from the ditch unconscious and transported without identification to a different facility. I don't say this to assign blame. Accidents happen in the worst conditions, and the people who worked that scene were doing their best. What I know is that my daughter was alive, that she lived 9 years not knowing who she was, that she found a journal in a box in a storage room, and she was brave enough to pick up a phone, the wool scarf, the blue one with white snowflakes. I asked her once if she had any memory of it. She was quiet for a moment, and then she told me that the one possession she had kept from the hospital, the one thing that had been with her when she was found, was a blue scarf that she had held onto through every move, every transition, all 9 years. She had assumed it was hers. She had kept it because she said it made her feel safe in a way she couldn't explain. It is her grandmother's knitting. I recognized it in the photo she sent me. Claire, she is learning to use that name again, though she says it feels strange yet. Like wearing a coat that doesn't quite fit but is slowly warming, is coming to Levis for Christmas. She will sleep in the room that used to be hers, which I have not changed very much, because I am a 64-year-old man who didn't see much reason to redecorate a room that felt like it was still waiting. I think it was. My sister is flying in from Edmonton. Gilles has been invited for Christmas dinner, which has never happened before, but felt correct. I have bought Claire a new journal, green cover, elastic band, and written her name on the inside, in black marker, the way she taught herself to do when she was 14 years old. Last name first. Bouchard. Claire. I don't know what the coming years look like. There are processes underway, official and otherwise, that I won't go into here. There is grief that I carried for 9 years that is now transforming into something I don't have a name for yet, not quite joy. More like the feeling when a window opens in a room that has been closed too long. There is a daughter who has a long way to go in recovering something of herself, and a father who has a long way to go in understanding who she has become. We are, both of us, strangers who share the same blood and the same history, and we are beginning, carefully, to learn each other. Last week she sent me a photo of her cat, Biscuit, sitting on a pile of laundry with an expression of complete indifference. She sent it with a single line. He has absolutely no respect for clean clothes. I laughed for the first time in I don't know how long. Real laughter. The kind that comes from somewhere genuine. I wrote back, "Neither did you. When you were small, She sent back a single emoji, a yellow heart. I have it saved. I'm not sure I will ever delete it. I said at the beginning that I am not a man who believes in impossible things. I stand by that. I think what happened has an explanation improbable, painful, full of errors that should never have occurred. I think there is a difference between a miracle and a mistake that, by some extraordinary turn, corrected itself 9 years later on a Wednesday night when a woman named Sophie found the courage to send a message to a stranger who turned out to be her father. But I will tell you this. When I drove home from that first meeting in Moncton, and I crossed back into Quebec, and the river came into view, and the lights of Levis were reflected on the water the way they are in November, cold and clear, I felt something I had not felt since before that gray December Saturday 9 years ago. I felt like I was driving home to something